Good afternoon. Good afternoon. After I would say a very high-level presentation by Mr. Chari, I think I would come down to brass tacks very fast. I have been a hardcore manufacturing person, shop floor person, and probably worked my way through into supply chain. Supply chain is actually, I would say, a very funny function. It's a fulcrum of every organization, manufacturing organization, in fact. It has its advantages and disadvantages. Disadvantage is that you get blamed for everything. Anything which goes wrong in an organization finally comes down to supply chain. Advantage is that you can blame somebody for something going wrong. You always find some scapegoat. So either way, you are in a good position. You as a supply chain professional, you should know how to use it. I belong to that profession, and I have used it very often, very effectively in my life. I'm also a chemical engineer, and a supply chain professional, who is very similar to a chemical engineer. I don't know how many of you have actually read this aspect of a chemical engineer. A definition of a chemical engineer is that he talks chemistry in the presence of engineers, engineering in the presence of chemists, and politics in the presence of both. So a supply chain person is very similar. Okay, he will talk manufacturing with the procurement guy, procurement with the manufacturing guy, logistics with the front end. So in a way, it's nice to be in a profession like that. You always get one person to blame things on. Okay, taking it forward, I'll just get into the basic definition of supply chain, which is, I would say, getting things right. Getting things right in terms of the product, in terms of the location, getting things right in terms of the time, getting things right in terms of place, getting things right in terms of cost. And last but not the least is getting things right in terms of condition, especially if you're in the food industry or in the pharmaceutical industry. And the Herculean task of supply chain is matching demand to supply. And it's very easier said than done, because you are, you're constantly, encountering the gap between supply and demand. Yeah. I would, probably, when I'm saying, it's getting things right, I would like to talk about my experience in Asian Paints. I've been there for a long period, about 14 years. And here is an organization which got things right way back in 1964, when Indian paint industry was, say, dominated by the foreign companies. And here was a company which probably became number one in that sector in 1964 and continues to be number one even today for 50 years down the line. And with a market share which was about 50% at one point of time, growing up to 60%. And what was great about the organization? Was it the product? Was it the quality of the product? Was it the range of the product? I would say most companies had that. What distinguished that company was its supply chain. It was one of the first companies in India to have made inroads into the rural market, which made paint available at every nook and corner of the country. And that success is something which I think even today stands the company in good deed. I happen to be, just happened to help a friend of mine who's into the paint business, and he started, getting into some branding, and he got into some competition, and he tried to do something, which could move away Asian dealers into his business. And he went on air, he advertised in Eenadu channel, he advertised in a lot of Telugu channels during Dussehra Diwali of last year, and lost 50 lakhs in the whole process because he just couldn't get any dealer in India in Andhra to switch over from Asian Paints. And that's the loyalty which the company drew. And that's not, again I'm repeating, it's not through a great product, it's not through a great range of products, it's great supply chain, because they never had a situation when they were out of market. Another example I would quote, probably the example again is slightly different. I go back to another company I worked in. In terms of emphasizing the philosophy of supply chain. It was in Marico, and those days we used to have a lot of products reserved for the small scale, and hair oils was one such category. And when that was removed, when liberalization happened, we decided to put up a factory at Dehradun. Consolidated the entire hair oil business and put up a unit at Dehradun. 1 year into operation, there was an earthquake, and the factory next to us close to collapsed. Luckily, we had done our civil engineering right, and we survived. But that gave us a big shock, and we had an existing factory at Daman, which we were trying to close down. So it just struck me, and he said, look, I'll keep operations of Daman unit on. And went back to Harsh Mariwala and told him, look, Harsh, I would like to keep this thing, on. Probably cut it down to a single shift, probably manage to supply only west and, some parts of south from Daman, but I would like to keep this factory as a backup. He said, go ahead, and the logic, I looked at it from a supply chain perspective, and I gave the proposal. He said, go ahead. His logic was very different. He says, Vasan, today I cannot afford to be out of market for even a single day. He said, brand loyalties are low. This is about 10 years back. And he said, brand loyalties are low. If my product is not available on the shelf for a single day, people might never come back to my product again in life. So keep that product on and keep that factory on. I would like to, take the cost of it. So when we are saying getting it right, it's right in various senses, and it is just not one aspect of rightness. You might have a beautiful product, but it might just not do well, So, you have to get the entire mix right. Composites of supply chain, and any professional in supply chain would know the composites. It's nothing new which I'm talking about. But to recapture it, we're talking about what he just probably said not to use the word, but I'm still using the word forecasting to order management, to demand management, and then from there moving on to materials management, procurement, then moving on to supply management, which is closely interacting with manufacturing, and last but not the least is the logistics and distribution. That's as important in today's world. So this entire gambit of various baskets which are in the organization together form the supply chain. And if you look at these baskets, and you see that this is connected to every aspect of the organization, because if you look at it from the order management aspect, your front end is the entire sales force, the marketing teams are all involved in this order management system. You have, when you're coming down to manufacturing or into even materials, your R&D and your packaging development teams are very closely associated. Of course, finance is associated because, of course, without finance, nothing runs in the organization, but, in terms of cost of goods sold, they are involved. So, in some way, I'm going back to my first point saying that, supply chain is the fulcrum of any organization. And as technology is more and more easily available, okay, I think what is going to differentiate an organization is going to be how they get the supply chain right. When you again talk about supply chain, I would say supply chain starts with the design of an organization at the time of design of a manufacturing unit or at the design of a product. Most organizations, when they start, they would look at a product portfolio and say whether this product portfolio is the right product portfolio for me, for this organization. Yes, that's extremely critical, because if you don't get your product portfolio right, you could result in a lot of write-off losses. Okay, but that's not the only thing. That's an important strategy. Moving on, the location of manufacturing is extremely important in a supply chain. Depending upon the type of product, you could be, deciding where you want your location, whether you want it closer to the market, you want to closer to the source of raw material. In Pidilite, we were in a business of construction chemicals. You must all be aware of the brand called Dr. Fixit. The basic raw material is river sand. So in that type of an industry, you have to be closer to the source of raw material. But there are industries where you can say I would be closer to the market. If you're in some point I have mentioned about the finishing. If you're selling garments, probably you would like to have the finishing operations closer to the market. So the location of a unit becomes extremely critical to a supply chain. Warehousing, of course, is important because depending on whether you want to have multiple warehouses, you want to have a single warehouse. And if you are looking at the India market, most organizations operate at multiple warehousing. But with the, probably the national corridors, road corridors coming in, it might make a lot of sense to have, reduce on the number of warehouses. The facility, of course, in terms of when I say the facilities, again, if you're having a manufacturing setup, how would you like to design the facility? Whether you want to put it in terms of product line, specializing in product line, or you want to have, again, a regional mix. I'm going back to my manufacturing days of Asian Paints. Asian Paints makes, enamels, wall putties, primers, so acrylic emulsions, automotive paints. When you're doing that, there were a lot of debate going on whether we should be very focused in terms of the thing. Should we have one large automotive plant, or do we want to have, multiple plants catering to, one in south, which is catering to, say, Hyundai and General Motors, one in north catering to Maruti. So these are the debates going on. So Asian Paints finally decided not to have huge single product plants, but to have multiple plants. But again, these are strategies. Like, there's nothing right or wrong in it. You as a supply chain person can influence the company based on data you have, and there's nothing which is golden about any of these things. Of course, for anything, people and processes become extremely important, and he did mention a lot about talent management, talent acquisition and management, and of course, people become a very critical aspect of any of your strategy. And processes also become very important, because right from day one, if you get your processes right, here I would talk about processes like right from your IT systems. Today, probably your ERP is the backbone of any organization. Without it, I don't think organizations exist today. But beyond that, what? Beyond a transaction system, do you have a supply chain system which is more robust? Those are the questions which you can ask yourself and probably design it when you're into the first phase of an organization. Last but not the least, whatever you do, if you don't execute it well, you are not doing a job right. So, execution, of course, becomes extremely critical. Coming to the key challenges of supply chain, one, putting it very simplistically, I would say one is the external challenge and one is the internal challenge. The external challenge is globalization, the regulatory obligations, put together the compliance factors. The globalization, more from the point of view of, you are competing in a global environment. No, you're no more competing with Indian companies. So, if you are an Indian company, but you're not competing, so you have to understand the behavior of people outside. So, that's extremely important. Regulatory, of course, nobody needs to elaborate on it. Regulatory and compliance, and especially the type of industry you are in. If you're in an industry like pharma, I think regulatory drives everything. So that's it. Even in foods, we are more or less into a very regulatory controlled environment. I would say personal care also might move into it very soon. So, regulatory is going to be extremely critical. The internal processes or internal challenges for an organization are more than what I would say external. External could be more impacting, but what is probably on a day-to-day basis for a supply chain professional could be more in terms of internal challenges. And that starts with forecasting. Sorry, sir, to keep using the word forecasting, but I'm still, I think, in 2000 right now. forecasting is actually a big challenge even today. And again, I would say it depends on the type of market you are in. And I would say in Asian Paints, Marico and Pidilite, which are extremely, I would say, I would call them FMCG companies, operating at the marketplace. Their level of forecasting accuracy was anywhere between 70 to 75, at best 80, which is considered extremely good, extremely good. In the, I've been, I would say, fortunate or unfortunate to be in pharma, but the type of forecasting accuracy I face is horrendous. We have an accuracy of anywhere between 30 to 40%, and we have products which come with an accuracy of probably a variation of 300%. So to us, a supply chain person, this today continues to be a big challenge, and it's something which probably, if people are there in the supply chain, especially in the pharma sector, they would probably understand what I'm saying. Now, forecasting to demand planning, again, given your internal checks, balances, and controls, that becomes a challenge. Lesser challenge than I would say forecasting. If your forecasting gets better, your demand planning gets better, and if your IT systems are in place, then this is less of a challenge. Sourcing procurement being a challenge would more from a point of view of a regulated environment, where, again, in the pharma industry, where to change a source, it's a 2-year process sometimes, so that becomes extremely challenging. From an FMCG point of view, if you're in a commodity market, sourcing becomes a challenge, because you're just not, I remember when we were in, I was in Marico, we basically, coconut oil is the biggest business we were in. But the copra buying, was Indian. India is the biggest copra market, and incidentally, coconut oil, we are the single largest producer in the world, in terms of, in a small pack. But, copra buying, when you're doing benchmarking of copra buying, you just don't benchmark demand supply of copra, what is happening in India, because you are benchmarking against the soybean oil of US, you're benchmarking against palm oil of Malaysia or Indonesia, you're benchmarking, various oils across the world. So, that's the biggest challenge in sourcing of, for a commodity market. How do you source? And if anybody has been in commodity sourcing over the last 10 years, at least once he would have probably lost his job because of a wrong buying decision he took, and because the buying decision runs into probably tens of crores. I remember a story I read about Adani group, and somebody in sourcing had made a very colossal, forward buying and lost a lot of money because he had pitched it against, soya buying against, various markets, and then that year was the bumper crop in Malaysia and Indonesia, and palm and soya prices crashed. And I think he lost probably about hundreds of crores, and so he went with his resignation letter to Adani and told him, boss, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, I would like to leave. He says, no. He says, I don't want somebody else to learn from your mistake. I've learned enough, so continue with me. So, and I don't want to lose somebody who's, so costly for me. So, in a commodity buying, you make huge mistakes, so it's nothing. I don't know much about auto sector, but I'm sure the auto sector is far more organized and far more disciplined than some of these markets. So I think the sourcing or procurement could be a lesser challenge there. Capacities and manufacturing, again, is a interesting subject. Some of this, again, I'm elaborating a bit as I go on, so I would touch upon it. And inventory management, favorite subject of any finance person. So, again, I would like to touch upon it as I go along. Logistics and distribution, very critical to any organization. And if you see all this, what's common cutting across is IT. And today, without IT and a well-enabled IT, I don't think we would do justice to any of these challenges. Now, I would just probably run through fast in terms of what I have to say about each of the heads I have touched upon in my previous slide. Globalization and regulatory obligation. Now, one is this, especially if it goes to food and pharma, the country-specific needs are unique, and one really has to be able to understand and deliver on that. If you look at pharma again, I would say, if you take it Europe, people normally refer to Europe as one aspect. It's actually, I would say, very complicated, because each of the products has to have the specific language, the specific artwork. It's extremely complicated in terms of, catering to a region like Europe. Okay. And with that comes your market approvals, your licenses, the whole factor is so cumbersome and long, and it's getting tougher. It's not that it is getting easier. It's getting tougher as we go along. Regulatory environment changing. All of you know about ETP, pedigree, and the impact of the DQSA, which is coming in US. So these are going to increase. We have had the DGFT, track and trace being implemented in India. So this globalization and regulatory challenges are going to increase, and we are going to face tougher and tougher challenges. And that's where I think packaging would start playing an extremely important role. Packaging as a development, as a function, I would say it will continue to play an extremely important role as we go along. And for all this, of course, you need I'm saying I keep HR as the basic, underliner for everything. Because if you do not have competencies, you do not have skills, you do not have resources, I don't think we would be able to achieve a lot in terms of thing. And, and one of the constant challenges anyone in an organization faces is in terms of having the right people, today in packaging development, if I lose people, I find it difficult to get people for 6 months, So that's the level of thing, and that's where somewhere I would say some organizations I heard are doing their own in terms of building their colleges and building their things to support, especially on the pharma side, which is, I would say, extremely innovative and a smart move, for you to feed, into your own. It's like having your vendor, So I'm saying if I'm buying raw material from outside, why not I support a very critical need of mine through my own resources in terms of having a college or having a training institute. I would say it's a very smart move and a very innovative move. I've talked enough about forecast and demand, I guess, because I do sympathize with the marketing people. We are at loggerheads with marketing people, and and since I'm right now operating in a 100% export environment, my fight starts every day at 5 o'clock in the evening and goes on up to 7:30 because of the time lag, and so I land up half the time not having a good sleep in the night. And I can understand their problems. I can understand the pressures they are going through and mainly because of competitor actions. And sometimes the competitor action is also probably an inaction or a failure. When one company has got a FDA alert, and then we want to capitalize on it, and then we say we want to move fast. So there's some big opportunity in the market. So I would, if I was a marketing head there, I would grab that opportunity. But as a supply chain person, I'm not ready. No, I'm not ready to grab that opportunity. So that conflict will go on and probably go on forever. But how do you minimize it? The challenge is, how do you reduce it? How do you minimize it? How do you negate it as much as you can? Price and margin pressures will continue whether you're in domestic or whether you're in the international market. Yes, a lot of places, if you are again in the Indian domestic pharmaceutical side, there are price regulations. So they are going to be probably increasing, and there are going to be much more pressures in terms of margin pressures. Product lead times, again, people are wanting crashed as much as possible. Today I was, probably you might know that Aurobindo has acquired the Actavis business in Europe, and today whole of morning I was with their team, and we normally operate with a lead time of 90 days from the day sales order is punched into shipment out, and they were very upset. They're saying, I wanted in 45 days. Now I had to explain to them why 90 is the best, So the pressure is there in terms of, saying that can I crash it further and further. So that's, another pressure we'll have. Sales and distribution channels, whether it is in India or abroad, are going to be constantly changing and evolving. Yeah. Supplier relationships, I did talk, things. See, these are some things which I will right now probably use the panel also to talk about. because when you're saying procurement, it's also the challenge of saying how much of, long-term relationship I have with my supplier, what are the innovative things I can do with my supplier. Risk mitigation is another extremely important thing. Is for every item, do I have a risk mitigation exercise? Do I have an alternate source? It becomes more difficult when you're in the regulated market, when you're in an industry like pharma. Pricing, of course, and inventory carrying costs, warehousing, logistics, and storage costs. Bear with me if I'm rushing through because I think time pressure is there. Capacities and manufacturing, I didn't touch much on this in my first slide. For any supply chain, I think this becomes, again, within the fulcrum of supply chain, this becomes more of a fulcrum because you have to be flexible in your manufacturing as much as reliable. Reliability today is actually easier and probably more taken for granted because you have enough processes and systems supporting it, which is TQM, TPM, Six Sigma, and if you're able to imbibe those processes and systems, you can probably give a reliability of manufacturing. And in half of this, if you're not doing this, you don't exist also. Like today, quality was a big subject about 10 years back. Like today, quality is not a very big subject because if you don't have it, you don't exist. Quality is taken for granted. You don't exist if you don't have a quality product. But what becomes more critical is my flexibility in manufacturing, planning for a three-year horizon, having that much amount of capacity available with me, depending upon the market for needs. How do I assess market conditions and then build my capacity so that I can stay with about 30 to 40% capacity free available at any point of time for any opportunities in the market or any demand fluctuation. That becomes a very, very important thing. Again, going back to my Asian Paints or Marico days, I would say those companies operate with about 35-40% excess capacity. Now, one can say that those industries, the cost of capital for capacity creation is not so high as compared to, say, automobile or a pharma. But yes, in some way, probably not 40%, but probably is 25 or 30% excess capacity at any point of time is the need of the hour. Logistics, yes, logistics is extremely important because finally, there was one point of time when people used to say supply chain means logistics. Now sometimes I feel logistics has got thrown too much into the background, and people forget that finally logistics is extremely important because they are the ones who take the goods safely to where you have to reach it. Not only in terms of the quality of the shipment, and especially when it comes down to food or pharma in terms of temperature controls. When you're moving products via Dubai, one has to be extremely careful about what type of conditions you're moving it through. So those challenges are always there. The speed, everyone wants every good yesterday. So in terms of speed of dispatch, in terms of I think probably Sunil will touch upon it. In terms of probably we're looking, sorry, Mr. He will touch when he's talking about logistics. There are places where we are talking about truck. Within the factory, a truck turnaround time of 20 minutes. Before we used to, the Indigo or SpiceJet talks about turnaround time of 20 minutes. Now we want our trucks coming inside the factory to be loaded or unloaded in 20 minutes. So, if you want to keep that as a challenge and move on, so there are huge challenges, because no factory can have, parking place for 100 trucks. So, it's how fast you move out becomes a big challenge. So, now just finally, how do you measure yourself? How does supply chain measure itself? Finally, it's a few parameters. I can probably elaborate much more, but just to think, one is on time in full. When I say on time in full, it's not the finished goods. I would say even a purchase team has to measure itself on time and in full delivery. Zero rejections. Okay, cost of goods sold. It depends on thing. One of the parameters I constantly get measured on is in terms of my CO Johnson as a percentage to the sale. Inventory norms, inventory control, how much of coverage I have for forward sales, as much of non-moving inventory. And last but not least is in terms of compliance, compliance to every act of the land and every regulatory thing. So with this I conclude. I'll throw it open. I think I will invite him. He'll speak about logistics, and then we will get into the panel. Yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon. So my name got included yesterday night actually, because my boss, he could not come, Dr. Ravi Prakash Mathur. So you have to excuse me, for I have not prepared well for the speech actually. Okay, yeah. These definitions and all those things were explained by Mr. Chari and Mr. Vasan. Just I will go directly to the complexities in supply chain. Okay. So the major factors which are contributing to the supply chain complexity are the foremost is the uncertainty in demand and supply. Okay. So we plan certain things, but things never happen as expected. Okay. Thereby the whole volatility comes into the supply chain. Okay. So example, every year we plan we target a sea shipments of almost like 60%. Okay, just I am taking the case of my company, Dr. Reddy's. But we never achieve the target of 60% because of uncertainty in demand. Okay, so North America market, they say I have added 2 distributors. You cannot send it by sea, you have to send it by air. Okay, there I lose my flexibility. In that I cannot send it by sea. Okay, thereby it is a more complex. And I have a commitment with the airlines and sea shipment, sea liner, but I never meet the commitment because of these factors, uncertainty. Okay, in the same way, even the the production also, it's unpredictable. Okay, all the there will be some issue in the quality or some issue in the line. That makes the supply chain more complex actually. Okay, then the multiple go-to market models. Okay, that also adds complexity to the market, to the supply chain. Okay, and the next one is deal design. Okay, many corporates nowadays they are into the tax saving model. Thereby they go to they route the shipments through different countries. Tax haven zones, like Latvia or Switzerland. All these models, it makes large supply chain life more complex. Okay, instead of sending the invoice directly to end customer, I have to make many via. Okay, that makes life more complex. Okay, then the emergence of the contract manufacturing organizations. Nowadays, no company is ready to own the assets. Okay, it is all outsourced. Okay, so outsourcing, I am not going to have my own plant. Okay, I give it for outsourcing. I give it to the to some Cipla or Ranbaxy or Lupin or whoever it is. Thereby, it is very complex to have the planning as well as execution. It requires a lot of coordination. Okay, so that is also one of the complexities adding to the supply chain. Okay, and all these things have to be technology can enable all these complexities in managing. Okay, yeah. Yeah, now markets are very global. Okay, take the case of Dr. Reddy's. Now Dr. Reddy's is present in all continents. Okay, thereby the complexity increases actually, supply chain complexity, and at the same time, width as well as depth. The Dr. Reddy, in the country itself, we penetrate into nook and corners. Not only in India, even in Russia also. In Russia also, even in the remote area like Siberia or Vladivostok, the brand is available. That is how that is, in depth we go to the market. Okay. Okay, and also the markets are multi-tiered. We have wholesale, retail, primary sales, secondary sale, all these things. This also, it's more of complexity adding to the supply chain. For example, in India, we have 29 CFAs. Okay, all these 29s are connected with 2 global distribution centers. Okay, it's a very, and also, all these 29 distributors, CFAs, they supply to almost 2,000 plus distributors. Now, it is a wide network we operate. Okay, and if you look at some of the challenges, like government effectiveness risk, legal and regulatory, like FDA, USDA, GDP, GMP, all these regulatory changes also it adds, it has to be complied. Okay, and also microeconomic risk like exchange rate fluctuation. Take the case of Venezuela. Now there is a huge devaluation in the currency. Okay, so that also adds to the complexity of the supply chain. Okay, I made the product ready for supply, but there is a devaluation. Okay, Venezuela, or Belarus, these countries are prone to supply this exchange rate fluctuation all the time. Okay, and also tax policy also sometimes it adds complexity. Okay, and foreign trade and payment risk, and also infrastructure risk also is there. If the distribution network is not properly infrastructure, then it is an issue. Okay. Then take the specific case of pharma, that cold chain. Okay, and cold chain is a if it is a direct cold chain, the ice packs have to be pre-cooled. Then it has to be packed and it has to be loaded into the truck and then has to be unloaded into the air cargo complex and then into the all these things. It is subject to a lot of temperature escalations. Okay, so it is a very complex cold chain. Of course, there are some solutions. Like the clusters, like the transportation capabilities. We have to have, and also temperature control packaging solutions. Which are available now, and it is a now it is a fast growing actually. Okay, and also contingency planning of dry ice change in the hubs. If the shipment traveled more than 72 hours, the dry ice has to be replaced. Okay. And and in the tracking, if there are excursions, the regulatory authority comes into the picture, and they ask for the CAPA, and the manufacturer has to demonstrate that the CAPA. Okay, and to handle all these things, the company should have regulatory knowledge, custom clearance knowledge, expertise, and commitment to the quality and good distribution practices. All these things, we have to have. And supply chain has got end-to-end responsibility, right from the customer, right from the sourcing till the product reaches to the customer. Okay, and in that the production should play a role of shrinking the production lead times. And in the same way, supply chain it has to ensure that the right product is delivered at right time and at the right place. Okay, and there should not be any excess inventories or deficit inventory. And the R&D also should support a continuous innovation and thereby deliver the new product. Okay, and just it is how the supply chain evaluation happened. From 1900 to 1950, this lot sizing and containerization took place, and 50 to 1990, JIT Toyota production systems, those things have evolved. And in 90s, the quality management system, ISO, total quality management, air cargo, all these things started. And in 2000, GPS, RFID, 3PL, 4PL. And now we are sitting on ERP and e-pedigree, that is serialization. Okay, so that is how the supply chain evaluation happened. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, sir, for giving us an overview of logistics and distribution. We have two more experts with us on the panel. Mr. Das Gupta is an expert in terms of food and also in terms of packaging. Currently, he's right now a consultant, and Mr. Iyer, who's into consulting, hardcore consulting in terms of supply chain. Okay, and I would probably throw up a question to Mr. Iyer. If, what all we talked, what all I talked, or probably some of us here talked about, and we have encountered. you know, sometimes you feel, okay, we are doing the same thing over and over again, probably trying to do it better, you know. Yes, if you look at very base to what I have said, you know, sometimes you do feel that, you know, this is what we have done 10 years back, you know, in terms of, so what's new about it, you know. Your experience in terms of, you know, because being a consultant, one big advantage is you see a lot of industries, a lot of organizations cutting across various types of industries. What do you think is innovative happening currently? What probably I didn't touch upon or it's not been spoken about, something very innovative, you know, different. It could be in any area. It could be in the area of logistics. It could be in the sourcing. You know, you were mentioning to me over lunch in terms of sourcing. Anything, something completely different, which, you know, probably we are not right now, you know, aware of, or probably we are not yet explored.
That's a good question. In fact, I was wondering, you having covered it, and between both of you, you have covered, and Mr. Chari earlier on, you have covered most of it, so what's there to talk about? Okay. So fundamentally, things are same. Things remain same only. Okay. In fact, I was just looking into the last slide. If you look into the posture, the first posture and the last posture remains similar. They're similar in some manner. So it's overall it's the same only with respect to what's there. I would say the way we are looking into supply chain. Earlier, we looked into supply chain. I'm answering a question indirectly, not directly coming into it. Earlier, a lot of us know that when we talked about supply chain, it was logistics. Then we said that, hey, look, it's something more than logistics. It needs to cover planning. Then it comes to, look, it's not only planning, it's an ecosystem of our partners, so on and so forth. So we start doing the similar things. So we start doing the similar things with a greater deal of stakeholders. The similar things. Now, collaborating between functions itself is difficult. And forget collaborating between stakeholders generally. Within the functions itself is difficult. Sometimes the resistance are more internal rather than with the stakeholders. So that's one area still greatly work in progress with respect to supply chains. And it's a good word also to talk about. But it's much more than what it meets the eye on collaboration. The next, we all talk about volatility, we all talk about risks. Do we measure it? There are some of them will come back and say that, yeah, we have got a risk score. What's happening to you in this particular area is, a few years back, a set of investment bankers got into developing some supply chain solutions. And their idea was completely around risk and volatility. So they introduced a concept which is a value at risk concept, which is used in financial markets in supply chain. So does one know as a metric what is the value at risk in the supply chain if there is a disruption? And which are those stress points? So when I measure risks, it is about three things. What is the scale of risks? What all it covers? What is the scope of risk? If it happens, what all does it impact? And what is the duration of the risk? When the risk is there, how long the risk is? And what is the recovery? When you want to de-risk yourself, what is the recovery time? Okay. This is something which is genuinely happening in this market, not in this market, in this particular space, with some of the leading companies. It started off in automotive with recalls from Toyota, period. They globalized, had huge vehicle recalls. Why it happened? Because they are not able to manage the same level of quality on account of cultural issues of managing in different continents. So that creates one of the reasons for these recalls once you expand. So when you get into scale, when the topic is about scale and complexity, so when you're getting into scale, scale starts impacting complexity. So they are both two sides of the same coin. That's the way I would put it. So collaboration, risk, to me, comes top of the mind in terms of some of the things which we need to look into going forward.
Perfect. I fully agree. In fact, as an organization, we have just appointed somebody in terms of risk analysis. So, it just probably gels with what you're saying in toto, completely. And I think collaboration is some word. I think I would say probably the more you talk about it, more you have to, re-emphasize on that. And I would like to take up one more word. He mentioned in terms of saying that, what he said is very true. Sometimes I find it sometimes much more difficult to deal with people internal to the organization than external to the organization. I get things done easier outside than what I have to do internal in the organization. So, some of the conflicts and some of the challenges are largely inside. And as probably sometimes we as leaders, we'll have to ensure that probably we break it somewhere and ensure that dealing within the organization is easy. So I fully agree with you. I think and move on. Mr. Dasgupta, probably you have a presentation. Oh, yeah, please go ahead.
So I was asked to cover on food, and so that will be my topic for next 15 minutes. I have around 15 slides, and around 50 people listening to me on what are the opportunities and challenges for supply chain for food. Now, I will come to a very common thing, a very common food or very common beverage. See, milk. Milk is collected in villages in the morning. I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Manthan. Milk comes, milk is collected. Every person who contributes milk is paid according to the fat content of the milk. The milk, after it's collected in a village, goes through a milk tanker to a place nearby where it is pasteurized. It's packed and it's distributed so that in the morning around 6 o'clock, gentlemen, you have milk for your tea and for your small little son who leaves for the school. Now, milk is a perishable item. This is possible only because of the supply chain which operates in this country. And now you see, now you see what difference would have made if an element of this would have gone out of control. For example, if it would not have been distributed within next 6 hours, your milk would have soured. Now here we have exactly an example of how a supply chain can be taken advantage of to bring the product to you with the costs very low and with very little of effort. But see the entire change. Now suppose this system is not working. What you would have done? You would have either done with an UHT milk or an aseptic milk or a flavored milk which is heat processed. When you have done this, the cost would have increased, your shelf life would have increased. Now the question is, for your morning milk, which is a short shelf life milk, do you require a flavored milk? Do you require an UHT milk? Perhaps not. But how the situation gets more complex. The milk cooperatives are moving out. The cities are expanding. Now you take more time for the milk to be collected, more time for the milk to come to your place. And the supply chain goes on becoming longer and longer. So that you would like to have milk also in the afternoon. So what I am saying is the supply chain for food is a very complex thing, and the entire thing is to reach the customer a food as he likes to take it or as the manufacturer would like them to reach his customer. So for example, what I am saying here is the texture, the flavor, the color, appearance, and the nutritive value. Now take the example of milk. Say if it goes sour, the flavor changes. People are conscious about the color of milk, about the appearance, and about the nutritive value. Here, the packaging plays an important role in the supply chain by slowing down significantly these undesirable changes during processing storage and distribution, which are a part of the supply chain. For example, what could happen? Textures, your biscuits, say your some of the powders, there could be a loss of solubility. You like your Bournvita to dissolve in milk. You don't like them to clump. You don't like your biscuits to toughen, a toughened biscuit. You don't like your biscuit to absorb moisture and get soft. In flavors, you don't like off flavors, which are rancid, which are oxidative, which are cooked flavors. You want your turmeric to be yellow and your chili to be red. So you don't want them, the color to be darkened or bleached or off colors. Now, say you want the appearance to remain the same, and you want no or very little degradation of vitamins, minerals, protein, and lipids. This is why you are packaging it, and this is why you are distributing it fast. Say, for example, let me come back to my earlier example of milk. You could distribute in the city, but what about, say, another 40 kilometers away from the city to the village? Perhaps you cannot. This is because of distribution. Today, so the supply chain of the food would also depend on your requirements. You can ask, the customer can ask, some guests have dropped in. I need milk for making tea. Now, suddenly there is a requirement for which there is no provision for milk. The fridge contains no milk. So instead of boiling it again and putting it into there, you will like an UHT milk or an aseptic milk to be there. So the requirement has changed. I have another packaging, another distribution model to meet my other customer requirements. So the packaging and the supply chain go hand in hand to meet the requirements of customer, which may be changing. For example, say if I'm distributing fresh milk, say I'm told that my trucks travel at 30 kilometers per hour. So suppose if this had been in Europe or even a neighborhood country like China, they would have traveled around 60 to 70, 80 kilometers per hour. Now, can you see how the reach is increasing for a supply chain for the same product? So supply chain for food is a complex interplay of these things. And when you see a degradation or a loss of this nutritive value, you want it to reduce it as fast as possible. Now, these are the deteriorative reactions in food. There are enzymatic changes, there are chemical changes, sensory quality changes. When you taste it, you find the difference. There is flavor changes, physical changes, microbiological changes, all happen in the case of food. Now, let me talk about a fresh food. Now, fresh food, all these changes are happening. But what you are trying to do through an improved supply chain or through an improved packaging is to slow down these processes. Let me give you an example of an packaging project I worked many years back on packaging of grapes. Now, the grapes, if you distribute it, the shelf life is very less. So we worked in Indian Institute of Packaging to find out a packaging and a distribution method and a temperature, optimum temperature, to find out what could be an ideal packaging for that and what could be a distribution pattern for it. We found that they need some chemicals which are put into a poly bags. Now they are also coated on paper, which is put inside this. The optimum temperature are 4 degrees centigrade. It needs to breathe. And the shelf life there is a dramatic increase in shelf life. Now, what did it do? Say, for example, grapes earlier were hardly exported from India. And they needed a refrigerated container. Now, what happened? Now, they needed a refrigerated container because the shelf life was less. They necessarily had to go by an air cargo. Now, when the shelf life increased through these, the improvement, it went by sea. The same distance of around 2.5, say the distance by sea was 2.5 months as compared to 7 days. So the shelf life which was increased was from 7.5 days to 2.5 months. and this led to a massive increase in export of grapes from our country. Similarly, there are similar stories in the case of mangoes. Mangoes, you will see now, they can sail because we understood about the shelf life, we understood about the packaging, and we understood what the supply chain is required for distributing that particular product. So these are the definitions of shelf life. Now, let me tell you a couple of things which affect you. For example, these are the theoretical definitions. It's the period the product